Alex, I hear I missed Harry Lorraine part one. Are we back in it again for more?
We are back in it for more, a little bit more Harry Lorraine, and there's some good stuff to watch today. I think you're gonna have a fun time watching this. I picked a couple that I think might particularly tickle your fancy. So.
Better than good stuff, the best stuff of all time.
Ever.
I almost made a move of it. I don't make a move of it. It's
It was
great.
quite fun the other day because we watched a great Harry Lorraine trick, and then we got to learn it. It was a lot of fun. That was what, Tuesday? Yeah, just a couple of days
ago.
Oh, in the after show, I heard we did in the after show, and then you guys had a complete workshop the very next night for the whole club on that same trick. It's a very rare situation, but you know, Harry Lorraine is one of the all-time classics for so many reasons. So I think they'll make themselves evident, and we'll get to talk about why, right? Does he say any of his catchphrases?
Oh, they're all over the place. You can't get away from him.
Oh, I love it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. I'll just have you all know, when I was 18 and I first met Harry Lorraine, the first time I sat down and he was doing tricks, the very first time, and he said to everybody, I just don't know. I've forgotten this one. And I don't think it's just not going to come together. I believed him.
Yeah. All right, this one's called The Sting. Let's check it out.
Classic.
Thank you. You are a good group. All right. I've really shuffled these cards. I'm going to ask you to use your imagination, but first I need about 5 cards here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards here. When I say use your imagination, I mean I want you to imagine that black cards represent oil. Oil, black oil, easy to remember, or black gold, they call it. If you can do that, if you can imagine that these black cards are oil, then you can also imagine that the red cards are water, the Red Sea, easy to remember. Actually, you don't have to remember anything. Just remember blacks and reds if you like, because the cliche is that oil and water do not mix. Reds and blacks do not mix. Look, let me prove that to you. Here's a red and a black, okay? A red and a black. Watch. A red, black, a red, black, a red, black, a red, black. Okay? Look, a red and a black, 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 a red and a black. In other words, I've mixed them. I've alternated them. Look, I've got red, black, red, black, red, black. If I did them this way, they would be black, red, black, red, black. Okay? If I have blacks and reds here, then I must have blacks and reds here, right? But if I snap my fingers, I'm a magician. No, they don't mix. These are all reds, you see. But I am a magician. I can make a mix if I want to. I just snap my fingers again, and look, I can make a mix. So now, if I have blacks and reds here, Tanya, then I must have blacks and reds here, right? Yes. Right? Wrong. These are all blacks, but they're the best darn blacks you can get in any card game. A royal flush in Spanish. Thank you.
That is some of the best Harry Lorraine.
Classic.
He leads with his chest, doesn't he?
Right? Wrong.
I've never seen a first phase, because that was Oil in the Queens, right? It was a Harry Lorraine version of Oil in the Queens. Yeah, red, black, jack, you know, with the surprise ending. But you know, I've never seen anyone throw themselves into phase 1 of any Oil and Water with such enthusiasm in my life. And it's kind of great because, you know, he doesn't even really have what we might call an opening display, you know?
He knows that ending's coming, man. He knows that ending is going to knock everyone down, and it's going to erase the memory of everything that came before it. Right?
Cards
so he's
saw,
like,
the cards you didn't see. It's really kind of amazing for people who do card tricks for a living, how much one does learn of all sorts of things from watching just a few minutes of Harry Lorraine. It's really astonishing and unique. I mean, there's really so much. He's doing those displays at the beginning, man, and he's like, they're red, they're black, they're mixed, it's over. I've like never seen so much energy thrown into that trick in my life.
Somebody actually Robert says, does he ever unwind? Yeah, he does. Like, I was talking about this in the last show, like hanging at Ruben's Deli in New York City with Harry Lorraine every Saturday, and mostly he was just a really relaxed, chill guy, you know, very quiet.
But hold on now. You and Robert Battle are from Mississippi. Is it fair to say that he unwinds from what we just saw down to basically a New York lunch level? Adam, I'm asking.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, he was just, those tended to be very long Saturdays, 6, 7 hours. So, maybe that's all it is. Maybe it was just a long day. But he was just, he'd be sitting there just like we are now. I mean, I think it's just once you turn the spotlight on, it's Terry Lorraine, man. It's
Well,
time
the
to do
first
some.
time I ever saw him, he was just hanging out with guys in the lobby, and some kid was poking him, and eventually it really looked like he, didn't really want or plan to do any magic. And I just remember, having been in magic for years, being so taken in by all of it. He really didn't want to do it. It was like Caesar, he didn't want the crown. He wouldn't take the crown. You had to beg him to, all right, maybe I'll see what I can do. But I got to tell you, I'm not what I used to be. And so in close up magic, like you're saying, Adam, that energy you're talking about it's not always like, ladies and gentlemen, he's on stage, or not. There's this middle ground, and he ramps up. He ramps up hard. You could think you're hanging out at the lobby with him, and before you know it, did he get big crowds when he did stuff at the deli?
Not really, no. No,
Never profit in your own deli.
Because Ken Krenzel was at the next table, and 50 other people were there. I mean, it was Reuben's Deli, right? So it was everybody. But he had his little crew.
Real gathering of the tribes.
Would Harry hold court and have his own spot, and people were just around him, and that's where he would sit the whole time?
Harry always sat at the most prominent table. Like when you walked in, the table at the very back in the center. That was Harry's table. Yes,
gotcha.
Always. And D'Souza was there. All right, let's watch some more magic, shall we?
Yeah. Let's keep going. Here's another.
Let's continue to show why Harry Lorraine is such a master magician. All right, here we go. See that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I want to try something. I guess you'd call it a little different. I want to try some mind reading, but I want someone else to do the mind reading, Tanya, not me. For example, that's why I have an extra card laying here. This is a red back deck of cards, and I've got one blue card here. And the red deck, of course, is shuffled. You don't know what that blue card is, do you? Of course not, neither do I, as a matter of fact, but somebody just handed it to me. But I want to do a little mind reading, but the hard way. You're going to do it kind of blindfolded. What I want you to do is try, and I know this sounds silly, try to select the red card that matches this blue card. Now that's impossible because you don't know what the blue card is and you can't see this, but try it anyway. Pull out any card and put it right here without looking at it. Yeah, pull out any card, whatever you think is going to match this, and put it right here. In other words, you think that card matches this blue card. Is that right? Okay, first, the blue card is the Jack of Hearts, the Jack of Hearts. Would you remember that? The Jack of Hearts. Let's see what card you thought was the Jack of Hearts. Wait a minute, wait, you did that. But you know something? I kind of know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You're saying, hey, wait a minute. What if I would have taken out any other card? For example, well, the King of Hearts. Well, you know what I would have done? I would have tapped that Jack of Hearts and simply made a change to the King of Hearts. So that's okay.
Pretty great variation on that theme, huh? Pretty cool. I've always been a fan of that thing because it sort of takes away a lot of the stuff before you get to the actual effect. It's like right to the meat of it, Always been a fan. That's a really cool trick. That color quickie is what he named it.
That's one. It's in my personal favorite. My favorite card tricks.
I think it's in my. Yeah, I think so.
The one with magician versus gambler.
Actually, that's coming up.
It's kind of just really fun to watch him throw himself into these tricks. I'm really just loving it.
Yeah, it's really awesome. It's awesome.
I feel like when we talk about Harry Lorraine, we have many magic luminaries that we love that never really thought card tricks were necessarily a way to really feed a family or anything. But I get the distinct impression Harry Lorraine was not in that group. I get the impression that Harry Lorraine was doing card tricks for as much money as he could get every night of the week,
It's funny. I've been reading a little bit more Harry Lorraine just because of all of the stuff we're doing with it for the, for Afternoon Astonishments. And I didn't know he owned a magic store in the 50s, right? Like he's been hardcore his whole life. You'll see in another one, he tells a story about being a kid and always being invited to parties, but bring that deck of cards, right? Like he's a lifer, man. He's been doing it forever. And yeah, I think card tricks are as important to him as any other subject in the world, if not more so. Right. I'm sure it's right there with science. He's thinking card tricks. Yeah.
Memory demonstrations. I think before the memory demonstrations, the card tricks paid the bills, right?
No doubt.
Yeah, let's do another.
Yeah, let's do this. You're gonna love this one. This one's for you.
Well, if that Oil in the Queens wasn't for me, then this one should satisfy.
Garnet says he sounds a bit like Regis Philbin.
He does, doesn't he? Oh my God. I wonder if one night, he was at a magic convention with Mel Brooks, and he brought Anne Bancroft and Mel Brooks to Las Vegas for a magic convention. And that was one of those years. It might have been that year that we stayed up all night and then crashed. Just like we didn't crash the lecture. We were just doing the Midnight Madness, and we stayed up all night, and it felt like we were crashing the lecture at like 8 a.m, right? But that night he'd been going into the main theater at the Riviera, at the Riv, with Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft. And Lee Asher turns to me and he says, I'm going to make him introduce me to Mel Brooks right now. We're pushing our way through the throng where he has got like a 2-person, Harry Lorraine wall around Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft as they're walking into the theater.
Wow. That's crazy.
It just occurred to me that's where I have to end the story. I can't.
After show. Hang out for the after show, everybody.
Yeah, I still won't remember that. It was before I developed my superpower memory.
It's going to be the after show then. Is what it's going to be.
There were, I don't know, it's a full deck, doesn't have to be. The gamblers and magicians have always argued or discussed among themselves who is the better card manipulator. There's good reason for those discussions, good reason for those arguments. One of the reasons is that a gambler is a very frustrated person. He or she is a very frustrated person. Well, for example, if you went over to a card table and saw a guy doing this, you're not going to play cards with him, right? So he can't do that. He can't show off his skill. Whereas a magician, everything a magician does is show off stuff. That's all it is. That's one reason. There's another reason that's really much more to the point, and that is that if a gambler makes a mistake, he can get killed, and it's kind of final. Whereas if a magician makes a mistake, what's the worst that can happen? He won't get paid, it's the worst that can happen. So that's why I want to tell you this story, because what happened, the best gambler in the world and the best magician in the world got together socially one day. And they got into the same discussion. Who's the best card manipulator in the world? As a matter of fact, after a couple of drinks, it was no longer a discussion. It became a hot argument. And the gambler turned to the magician and he said, look, buddy, I will bet you $1 million that you cannot take this deck, shuffle it, cut it any way you like, turn over the top card, do that 4 times, and get 4 of a kind. I'll bet you $1 million you can't do that. The magician said, buddy, I'll take you up on that on one condition, and that is that you let me cut the deck once, twice, 3 times each time. Then I will turn over the top card. I'll do that 4 times, and I'll cut 4 of a kind. The gambler said, something, I don't care if you cut them 39 times. You got to bet. Magician said, okay, reached into his pocket, took out $1 million, which is funny right away to find a magician with $1 million in his pocket. And he said, now remember, I have to cut the deck once, twice, 3 times, which he did. He felt the top card and he said, yep, I think I've got a queen. He said, I'm going to go for the queens. But remember, I must always cut the deck once, twice, 3 times, which he did. He felt the top card and he said, yep, I think I've got queen number 2. And he did. He had the queen, another queen. He said, remember, I must always cut the deck once, twice, 3 times. He felt the top card. He said, yep, I've got queen number 3, and he did. Of course, the gambler was getting very nervous. It was too late. He couldn't do anything because the magician cut the deck once, twice, 3 times. He felt the top card, and he said, yep, I've got queen up. Whoops. He goofed. Well, the gambler grabbed for the money. The magician said, wait, hey, fella, hold it. We didn't bet $1 million that I have to cut the 4 queens necessarily. The bet was that I have to cut 4 of a kind. Any 4 of a kind. So before you grab the money, act as a committee of 1 for me. Would you, Ursula, turn over those 3 queens on the table so everybody can see them, please? Right. And of course, no, hold it. because the gambler won the bet. The magician, of course, won the bet. But what he said afterwards to the gambler is, he said, I don't understand why you thought I had the 4 queens there. I couldn't possibly have had the queens because, look, I always keep 1 queen here in this pocket. He said, I couldn't possibly have had the queens because I always keep 1 queen right here in my back pocket. He said, I always keep 1 queen right here in my jacket. He said, and I can't understand why you thought I had the queens because I always keep 1 queen here in my wallet. That's something he couldn't understand. Because, thank you. I only do this at the end because I know you're all thinking there are 8 queens in this deck, and I just want to let you see that there aren't. Thanks again.
He's gonna close with that.
Gonna cut that line out.
I want you to see that you're wrong.
No. That's an objection. And if Harry Lorraine is clean, he wants you to know cleanliness can be yours. You paid for it. He's not a man to let the audience forget the feature benefits. You know what I mean?
That was entertaining to watch, Aaron.
It was.
Wasn't it? Did you see that look on his face? Hey, some of you are thinking, I have 8 queens and I want you to see. Aren't.
Huh?
Huh?
I love that trick. I've been saving it up for class. I love that trick. It's
right now at Conjure Community, we're actually doing some classes on that double undercut too, and it's quite wonderful to watch Harry's just knocking those out in that routine.
And it goes to prove for all of the people who've been developing skills and stuff, you can see the master do it. It's all about the attitude.
You know what? Speaking of attitude, is a great time to talk about the sponsor of this video, which is Conjure Community. That's right. If you are not a member of a magic club and you'd like to hang out with some really great people who are passionate about magic, then you should join Conjure Community, the world's best magic club, where we have proven practical advice for passionate magicians. We focus on perfecting your magic and performing magic and marketing your magic. We have lots of great free resources at conjure.community. And if you really feel like you need a good magic club, you should join the Conjure Community Club, where we have in-depth courses and training and exclusive live lectures and events, and an active, supportive community of magicians who love to do this kind of stuff. So head on over to conjure.community and you can find out more.
And you know what, Gracie, with considering all the resources that we have at the CC Club for members, Harry Lorraine, if he'd had Conjure Community growing up, he never would have been so shocked as to make a joke about the idea of a performing magician having $1 million in his pocket for a shady bet.
That hurt. When he said that hurt.
It was like, and he went, it was like, I felt like he was like doing his mother or something. He was like, a magician with $1 million.
To get a real job, you need a trade. You need a trade of some kind.
And they said, hey, gamblers, very depressing people.
I love that too.
And the magician,
they're always depressed. Very
just
sad.
showing off, just showing off. And still, even so, when we hear the Lorraine poker deal, when we see the magician versus the gambler, we're sort of getting some archetypal presentations from Harry Lorraine in their most archetypal form. It's kind of strange, but that is like that's a quintessential Lorraine trick. You know what I mean? That's the one I used to hear of tell all the time growing up. People were fascinated by it. You're taking me back to a time when, when he said, I only have those 4 queens, and I needed to know it, I needed to know it. I mean, we laughed today because we were like, thanks for, we know, buddy. But I felt it. I wanted a piece of that. I want a piece of that matzo ball soup you had, Adam.
Oh, they did have a good matzo there. All
I
right,
bet.
let's watch some linking cards. What do you guys
Tracy
think?
almost joined the tribe just from when he had the pastrami and the card magic.
Oh, taking me back. Corned beef on rye. Come on.
Yeah, Ruben's Deli was awesome.
Come on.
Now I think they meet at a pizza place. All right, this is Harry Lorraine's linking card.
You're saying they tore down Paradise and put up a pizza shop?
This is what I heard. I actually don't know where they meet these days. Anybody know in chat? Dennis, do you know?
All right, let's play it. What's this one called?
This
Don't tell me
is
if it's like aces to kings.
this is gonna be like La Lincoln
Hey,
card.
it's me right
Surprise, aces to kings.
Wow.
Thank you.
one.
You know, I got so involved
What are we
in
watching?
magic when I was a kid that, I mean, really involved that I needed a,
We're watching the wrong act. Like when
Did
I
we
said-
mess up there? Sorry about that.
Yeah, we almost watched our own stream, which, you know,
I mean, that's like you put a
If guys-
ripple in the time
if-
space
Pretty meta.
continuum.
if a guy watches his own stream, you know, if he doesn't, there's going to be a mess. Am I right?
Thank goodness it was that window and not the other window. We could have gotten in
Hello.
real trouble.
Hey now.
I want you guys to keep in mind those differences between magicians versus gamblers. I'd like to keep a good list. I think we can find more, even more pattern, more. All right.
Thank you. You know, I got so involved in magic when I was a kid that, I mean, really involved that I needed it was a hobby. It became an avocation. It was a profession for a while. I needed a respite from my hobby, from magic. So I got interested in origami, which is folding paper. But then I got so interested in origami that I needed a break from that. So I got into kirigami. I don't know if any of you know what kirigami is. Kirigami is tearing paper. So it's Japanese art. It's a little different from folding paper. So what I'm doing here is I'm tearing a couple of frames. You'll see why in a moment. Now, what I wanted here was a complete frame, Robin, without any tears. So what I would like you to do, if you would, let me just make this, neatness counts here. Make this a little better. So the whole point is there should be no tears. So while I'm making another one, why don't you sort of examine that? Don't make any tears for me, obviously. I don't want people to think you're a stooge or anything like that. But make sure that it's a complete rectangle. In other words, a complete frame while I tear another one. And then, of course, I know what you're thinking. You're saying, yeah, sure, I examined that one, but what about the one you're doing now? You know, well, again, it's important that you look at this and make sure that it's a complete frame. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just stand up, if you don't mind. Because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking that, yeah, sure, while you're looking at that, I'm putting a hole in this one, so why don't you look at this one? Well, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, while you're looking at that, well, this is perpetual motion. We can go on all day. Why don't you look at both of them at the same time? Make sure that there are no tears or breaks or nicks or trapdoors or mirrors. All right. Now, when I was doing this kirigami the other day, when I was playing with these things, a very strange thing happened. What happened is they kept falling out of my hands, and then I had both of them in my hands like this, and I was doing this, and what happened is they linked. They really did link. Can you see that? They linked. Now, you know what? It's physiologically impossible for them to be linked on the other side. You know that. But when I looked at the other side, I saw they were linked also. They really were. I couldn't get the darn things apart. They linked. But here's the important thing that you have to do for me, Robin. Take these two pinching fingers and pinch that link for me. Hold on to it. Now, look, I'm going to turn your hand so everyone can see it. The only way I can get these apart is by tearing one of these. So I'm going to do that, but don't you let go of the link. See, I'm going to tear one of these like this just to get them apart, and I'm going to hold them like this, and you can let go, and you can see if you take your two fingers the way I've got mine and hold them, and I want everyone to see that, you can see those are really linked, and I don't understand that. I never did. Yeah. Thanks.
It was pretty quick. He gets a lot out of that. It's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Did you hear that guy in the audience? Steve, did you hear that guy in the audience at the end? He was like, oh, yeah. Like somebody really loved that trick in the back.
I mean,
I love
You
it.
know what he's good at? You know, he's good at really believing in his material. He gets so much out of things because his confidence in the material is so high that it's infectious. His sincerity and enthusiasm feels so sincere, and I believe it is, that you can't help but have some of it wash off on you regardless of where you start. You know what I mean? It's really a force of nature.
Yeah, he's really outstanding. And you know, it's so simple because he's getting like so much out of almost nothing there with what this trick is. But it's like when he presents it, it's larger than life. And I think if you don't present this thing the way that Harry's presenting it, it's almost like it's flat. It's like a flat balloon, you know, there's like, it's not even a ball. There's nothing there. There's nothing to appreciate unless you sell it at every step like Harry's doing it. Otherwise, there's nothing there. There's really nothing there. It's amazing.
It's not as obvious, but you're giving words to exactly what I was feeling after the oil and the queens he did. It's like, it's not my favorite method for the trick. I don't feel like when he shows those red cards and black cards, I really feel like I saw him in such a way that I would want to see him before that trick happens to feel like whatever happened was what was supposed to happen. But what's fascinating is to watch the way Harry Lorraine, who I have to say understands all that as well as anyone, sells it so incredibly well because of that conviction that by the time it's over, you sort of forget all that stuff because you buy what he's selling you. It's really lovely as a showmanship.
A certain point, he's hitting you so hard with all of his conviction that I think you just surrender and you say, okay, I'm just going to go on the ride that Harry's giving me. And then when you surrender and you just let him take you down the path, now you're seeing what he wants you to see, and magic rainbows everywhere, right?
Guys, just if we ever get a chance, I for one would love to watch a Superpower memory infomercial with y'all in the same environment, because I have a feeling we would see the same.
That would be interesting.
We'll see.
Very similar.
We'll see the same thing. I mean, the job of selling a late night memory program is very similar to putting over card magic this way. You know, it's a salesmanship job. It's a beautiful thing. It really is.
Hey, Aaron, one day when I was at Rubens, I just found out about that memory course, you know, and I was trying to score me like a free copy. And so I was like saddled up to Harry and I was like, hey, I've been hearing about this memory course thing. And he was like, I'll cut you a really good deal on it. It's really funny. I was like, this guy is the always salesman, you know, always salesman. Always selling. What do you think, like, Steve, when you watch Harry do magic, Steve, like, what do you think his real superpower is?
I think it's his casualness. I think really, you know, he just really. I think we talked about it on Tuesday. There's you know, obviously in this we're watching a performance at L&L, I think, right? But normally it's just like a flowing thing that's just happening. There's no real beginnings and ends, and it just seems he just seems like he's him. I love that about any magician, right? When you feel like the person you're going to meet after the trick is the same guy, right? I mean, it may be a little different, but you know what I mean. He's not like some outrageous thing.
Totally, yeah.
And he reminds me of every New York guy that I know.
It's
so
very
funny.
comforting.
It's very comforting.
So funny that you say that, because, you know, I don't think he's of an era where he would consider himself to be like necessarily a jam magician, but he most certainly is. He certainly is he turns any place he's into a trade show booth / bar / hospitality suite. He just winds it up, man. It's really something to behold. I love it too.
Enthusiasm. I mean, there's so many great things about him.
All right, so we've got one more, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Might have saved the best for last, did we, Alex?
This one holds a special place in my heart. We talked about this one recently in the club, and I just really love this trick. And I had never seen Harry's presentation for it, and I think that there's some things to note here that are great, really great. I love it. So yeah, let's check it out. Really cool.
All right, we'll watch it and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. Here it is. Lazy man's card trick.
I wish I had that enthusiasm. Which reminds me, quite interesting segue, because it's true. When I was a kid, when I was very young, I was invited to a lot of parties. And boy, that made me feel good, you know, to be wanted. The problem with it, the downer was, every time the girl or the guy called me, he said, oh, Harry, you want you at the party? The end was, oh, and bring a deck of cards. You know, and that was kind of a downer, you know. I figured I wanted them to love me for me, you know, not for my talent. But I don't want to knock the talent. But one of the things that used to happen quite often, the reason I mentioned that is, oh, they would hand me a deck of cards, and I always say I'm very hard to start, but it's harder to stop me, man. I would go on for a few hours, and I was tired, and sure as shooting, whenever I was tired, and I was single in those days, and I'd meet a girl, and I'm trying to make time and talk to the girl. Sure enough, somebody would come in late, and the hostess would say, "Oh, Harry, would you do a trick for that person?" And I said, "Oh gosh, I just done 3 hours of magic." In those years, that was my short performance. So what I used to do, and it's kind of a true story. It's all right, and I was busy having a drink, talking to this girl, and this was you're the new person that just came in, and I'd say, "Oh, all right, look, let me do just one trick." And I wasn't really interested. See, I was interested in talking to this girl. I said, "I'll tell you what, would you do me a favor? Would you reach into the middle of the deck, sort of, and pull out any card? Just reach into the center, would you? And pull out any card." Meanwhile, I was talking to this guy. "Oh, look at the card and show it to at least one other person. Put it on top of the deck, would you? Oh, and give the deck a cut. Give it a complete cut." Yeah, that's the idea. And I would still do. "Did you cut the deck? Use this hand now and cut the deck again. I want to see how you do it with that hand. Let me see. Oh, you're doing it well, good." And I'd be, "Okay, give him another cut, would you? Yeah, just keep cutting till I tell you to stop." and I'm getting a phone number. "Would you cut him once more?" And I was getting your hand getting a little. "Would you turn the deck face up for me? Turn them face up, right? And while they're face up, give them another cut, would you? And when can I call you? On weekdays? Yeah, give another cut." And I would go on like this. Half the time I'd forget, but fine. I turned the deck face down. Oh, incidentally, how many times did you cut? You mean you didn't count them? Oh, shucks. Well, I think I counted about 14. 14 cards. Put your finger on the deck, just one finger. 14 cuts brings your card to 8th from the top. Your card is 8th. No. Don't loosen your finger. See, no. You just brought it up to 4th. No. Keep your hand pressed down. You just brought it to 2nd from your card is 2nd from the top, but your card is 2nd from the top. What was your card? What was it? Do you remember it? 5 of diamonds. I told you it was second. You don't believe me, do you? Take the top card, put it here. That's 1. Look at the second card. Did I ever lie to you before? I said, okay. All right.
You hear that guy in the back again? Oh God!
You love that magic.
Well, these guys are like, this is like you're a fan of Striper. You've seen Striper last year. Striper's back this year. They're doing the song again at the same time. You love it. And I do too. I love that.
I used to describe magic lectures to friends that didn't understand magic exactly like that. It's like going to see the obscure band that like none of your friends know who it is, but you know they're cool. You know what I mean? It's exactly like going to see the magic lecture.
That was a master class in how to do a self-working trick. That
was great.
And the reason that guy was like that, who'd seen that trick 1,000 times, was because when people saw Harry Lorraine give a lecture, they went home and they took a trick like that, and Harry made them feel like that was going to be their trick. And then they learned that trick, and then they performed that trick, but none of them handled that offhanded. The trick is about having a person give what may well be 20 to 30 single straight cuts to that deck of cards in order to get to this self-working trick. And I'll be darned if he didn't sell that like no one has ever sold that. I mean, it was just
having that interaction with the lady as if it were a party that he was at as a child, and playing it like that so that he has this other thing happening while he's saying cutting, keep on cutting. It creates this whole picture, and you lose track of how many times the cards are being cut, but you just know it's more than it should be. And he keeps on telling her to cut. How is this happening? Even though he's still interacting with the woman and trying to get the phone number and on and on. Really great. And not only that, the selection procedure, she was able to do everything herself with it on the table. I'd never seen that as the beginning of that trick either. Wonderful.
It's exciting.
Totally wonderful.
It's exciting, isn't it?
It really is. Because
it's like,
you know what it is? People don't say it this way, but it's Tamaresian. I think one of the things about the great American magicians of that era is it was before Ascanio and Tamarese gave a lot of words to a lot of things, which were always part of how great magic was done. Don't get me wrong, Tamarese and Ascanio were very clear to draw those lessons from those masters and say so. But Harry Lorraine was just, what he did there was every bit as difficult as any of the tricks from the Verbal Magic book or the Love Ritual or anything like that. It was not easy what he did there. It was just a masterpiece of orchestration and turning a method into an effect, like really just like that was
So
incredible.
Aaron, is that his superpower? What do you think Harry Lorraine's superpower is?
To me, what Steve said was lovely, but to me, that superpower of that infectious conviction and enthusiasm. It's, if they like you, they like your magic is true. And Harry Lorraine, though not Nate Leipzig, was more of a Mulaney, but he's very likable. He's likable. You might not like fast talking New York guys, but this guy he's got moxie.
Mm-hmm.
And so that likable energy, that infectious energy combined with that conviction, and then what Steve was saying about his truly nonchalant energy, it's just really, it's every bit of a force of nature. Like I said, like Bill Malone, it's a different kind of wind, but it is definitely feels like weather.
And he's charming too. Like when you watch him work with female spectators, he's charming them the whole time. So they feel like either he's like a really friendly uncle or like a grandpa, and they're welcome, and there's no offense taken to anything that might be blue when he's saying it, because it's all done really tongue in cheek. And because he's charming, you're like right there with him, like, this guy, I love this guy, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
You know what's cool about him, and I think we say this about all of our favorite magicians, right? It's like his own flavor, right? It's the Harry Lorraine flavor. It's the way he does things. We love that, and it wouldn't work for anybody else, but for him, it's like, this is, it's just perfect,